Milner. Can he tee up someone in red? And it goes towards London. Oh, he's done it! Liverpool have come back from the dead. And Deja Lovren with a vital goal for them. Liverpool lead at last at Anfield. This could be the most dramatic story of the season. It's Torres to give Chelsea a place in the Champions League final. The headline has been written.
Unbelievable!
Here, cross, and Dempsey's denied again, and Donovan has scored! Oh, can you believe this? Go, go, USA! Certainly through! Oh, it's incredible! You could not write a script like this!
Hello and welcome to the Stoppage Time Soccer Show. It's a brand new podcast of the English game from American perspective. My name is Jordan Wiegand, and I have our co-hosts Logan Stump.
Howdy.
And Matt Hartgrove.
Hey there.
And this is just a little intro episode to get us going before we make sure that we launch before the start of the Premier League season on September 12th. Typically what this show will be is breaking down games, breaking down the weeks, how teams are positioned, who played well, scores, fantasy elements of the game. We're going to try to have a fantasy league for the podcast. We're going to cover Champions League, maybe even some World Cup qualifying and U.S. men's national team news. So we are going to introduce ourselves here. So one, we're going to talk about how we got into the sport, and then what Premier League team each of us follows. Don't worry, while these are three big clubs, we will still be talking all the clubs of the Premier League this season. So even if you're a fan of, little Leeds, even though they're not so little, they're a big club. But if you're a big fan of Leeds, guess what? We'll still have Leeds coverage here. We'll start with Logan. How did you get into the sport? And then how did you choose your team, and what is your team?
I got started back in 2016?
14.
14? Was it 2014?
World
Cup.
Cup.
It was right after your program. Yeah, sorry. I keep thinking for some reason 2016. But anyway, 2014 I got started. I started watching the World Cup in 2010, but I was a big fan of like Dempsey and them, but I wasn't really keen to soccer at that time. But it was just fun to watch because we played baseball. I played travel baseball back then. I can remember after games, in baseball, baseball players, we always seem to have some kind of rivalry because in South Carolina, baseball and soccer were played at the same time. So we had kind of like a standing rivalry with anybody that played soccer. And I don't know why. But
before you keep going,
yeah,
that's me with lacrosse here, because when I played baseball, lacrosse was very popular in Maryland, which is where I am, and a lot of those players would make fun of me for playing baseball, call me names and all that kind of stuff. So I still do not like lacrosse. But yeah, go on.
But yeah, no, we were, after baseball games, we would go down into the lobby, and I'm pretty sure that the hotel management hated us, but all 14 of us would sit down in the lobby and watch World Cup soccer. So that's when I first started understanding what it was. I didn't start liking it and really following it until 2014. And I remember I was working a summer job at an ice cream place, and I can actually remember pulling out our phones and watching the game. And what's funny about Charleston is Charleston's actually it's heavily people that come down from the Northeast, or there's a lot of traveling and international people in Charleston. And I can remember in 2014, there were sports bars to the left and right of us, a couple blocks down. And people were running up and down the streets and stuff and yelling with the American flag and when they would score. And they would come into the ice cream shop and start yelling and screaming because they were plaster drunk, but they would start celebrating and stuff with us. And we were going crazy. I'm sure that people that own the ice cream store would probably not like to hear that, but there was nobody in it because everybody was watching the games at bars and pubs and stuff. So
right.
I remember getting into that, and then I remember telling you guys that I was into it, and I remember asking you guys where Aguero played, and he ended up at Man City. So that's where the love started. I loved watching Aguero, and I started playing with Man City on FIFA because we started getting FIFA right when I left my program with you guys because I saw you guys play it. So I wanted to play it, and my brother and I would stay up late nights playing the World Cup version of FIFA 2, and that's where I got started. I asked you guys, who can I follow, and you guys told me that I do remember that. After I told you Aguero and I started aligning myself, you guys said they were like the Yankees of soccer, which is, that's, but everybody gave me a hard time. Like all my friends around my hometown gave me a hard time that were big time soccer fans. They're like, you go with Man City, you like the Dolphins, the Pacers, and the Cubs, and you went with Man City. I was like, yeah, but think about that. Like I'm with some really horrible teams that don't spend any money. The Cubs started too around that time, but like, forever, the Cubs were hesitant to spend money, and everybody else, the Dolphins, they spend money, but they buy players that don't want to play. So that's where I got started with Man City, and I started following Man City ever since. And that's my big memory.
All right, Matt, how'd you get into it, and your favorite team?
So I believe it was 2012 when I was on. I believe that was a Euros, right? In 2012.
Yes. Yep.
So on a trip to Disney. It was a little bit beforehand. I started talking about soccer with some people back home. Not really big fans, but we kind of talked a little bit. And we might have played a little FIFA. But then the Euros started, and I remember getting into the Euros and watching the fans and how they reacted to their country. Sometimes it was not even a win. It was they would lose but still play really well. And I was like, okay, like these fans this isn't like watching baseball or football. Like this, like. These guys, they support and they show their love of their team in every situation. And I remember being at a Buffalo Wild Wings over close to Disney World, and I remember watching one of the games, and I just kept track of it. So we went to Epcot early on in that trip, and I had decided to get myself into it, but it was a little difficult because it's the first sport that like my family didn't really like. So most of my teams came from what my dad liked, which was, the Phillies in baseball, the Dolphins in football, kind of like the Wizards. It was hit or miss if I was watching basketball. And so this is kind of like, I have to figure out what I want. Like, who do I want to like? And I was in the UK Pavilion store that's right on the right-hand side across from the pub. And they used to have more than, I think right now they generally just only had like City and like Arsenal. But they had like 4 or 5 different teams, and the team that had like the smallest little area was Liverpool. But I really liked the red, like the full red kit. I still have it back home, actually, the one that I got. Has like these weird longish short sleeves. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to describe, but like I decided to get that one, and then I honestly just spent a lot of that trip reading about them. And that's pretty much how I got into it.
Is that the last Adidas kit?
It might have been.
Because I have the last Adidas kit, and that's the best looking Liverpool kit. I think. I just have nostalgia for it, even though I'm not a Liverpool fan. I played FIFA with like my brother-in-law one time, and we did a whole career mode where he was playing as my nephew on Liverpool, and I would just play as whatever second player or the rest of the team. I'd pretty much play as like the rest of the team, and we signed like Balotelli and all that. We just went crazy and played like multiple seasons of it that I had to buy a kit of that Liverpool kit.
Yeah, it does look like it was the last Adidas kit, and I don't mind it. The sleeves are weird. I guess maybe it wasn't as weird back in 2012, but like thinking of it now, I don't think you'd see a t-shirt or any type of jersey. But yeah, I just kind of read a lot about them. Seemed like they seemed like a team that would fall in line with the teams I liked, where they had years of amazing historical background, but then now in current day they aren't that good. Granted, the Phillies were good for 5 years when I was alive, so that was kind of nice. But I just kind of got into it, read all about them, read their history, the good and bad stuff, so I was able to understand like what happened, and not just like go, okay, like I understand the Hillsborough thing, but like, so I looked a lot into that too, just to see what it meant to people. But yeah, I still remember the first game. I believe that they might have lost 3-0 to like West Brom or something. And it was like, it seemed like it was going to be tough, but now it's gotten a lot better. But yeah, that's pretty much how I got into it. And slowly over the years, they've become my favorite team out of any of my sports teams.
All right. My favorite, well, when I got into the sport was the 2006 World Cup, which is 14 years ago already. It's scary. My first jersey was a Michael Ballack, Germany jersey for the 2006 World Cup. So, I followed that. I followed Germany and USA during that World Cup and bought FIFA. My dad brought home FIFA World Cup 2006, and I remember seeing it on the kitchen table and for PlayStation 2. And I was like, all right, I guess we're going to play this, right? And that's how I really started learning the rules more than watching the games, was just playing. Oh, it goes out, it's for a throw. If it goes out here, it's a corner. If it goes out there, it's a goal kick. That kind of stuff. Where really how I started picking up and learning the game and the players a bit on FIFA. And then, because back then in 2006, I didn't have like digital cable. We had like just regular cable, I guess. Like digital cable now, I don't even know if that's still a thing, but it's like where you have like 300, 400 channels instead of like 60, like on my basic cable. Mm-hmm. And on there, like you would only be able to watch the games if they were on ESPN. I didn't have any other sport channels really. It was like ESPN. That's where the World Cup was. And then once we started getting into club soccer and we bought the regular FIFA 2006 with the club teams, then, I started playing that, and I was actually taking German at the same time. And we watched this video on American players abroad, and it had DeMarcus Beasley and Steve Cherundolo from USA. They played for Hanover 96, Hanover 96. That became my club that I would play on FIFA 06 all the time, and I'd get fired, 5 games in the season. And then, I was pissed. And then, from there, I started, I was like, I really liked Michael Ballack. If I'm going to follow a English team, what team did he go to? And he had went to Chelsea. So it just so happened that Chelsea became really good, and won their first title in 2006, first Premier League title in 2005, and then won another one in 2006. And it looks like I was a bandwagoner, but I couldn't have told you that information at all back then. So then, fast forward a little bit, we get digital cable, and that came with Fox Soccer Channel. And that's where the Premier League was. That's where Serie A was at the time. And that's where, most of the Champions League, most of the soccer was on Fox Soccer Channel. And once we had that, I was able to watch the Premier League, Champions League all the time. And I couldn't watch Bundesliga. That was on Gold TV. That became, how I started watching it. And, we went over to England, and I got to experience the culture there a bit. Didn't get to go to any games. But when we came back from our first trip in England in 2009, Chelsea was playing AC Milan in Baltimore. So I went to M&T Bank Stadium and saw that friendly. I got a picture in front of the FA Cup. And then from there, it really grew. That was around the time that I really started getting the digital cable and being able to watch games all the time. And, I always say in 2006, it became my third favorite sport. In 2010, it became my first, my favorite sport. The World Cup 2010 came, and I was watching that all the time. I can't believe it's been 10 years already. I was watching every single game of that I could if I was not at work. And back then I had a part-time job, so it was very easy to watch most of the games. And yeah, so that's kind of how I got into it. And then as we keep going, 2010 was also, I started following Philadelphia Union, which is my MLS team and my favorite soccer team. And that was their inception, 2010. So I've been with them since the beginning. So that's been nice. But let me tell you, I'd love a Baltimore team if they ever get that in any of these leagues. But yeah, that's how I started following soccer, and why I chose Chelsea was because of Michael Ballack. And then once he left, I, stayed true to the blue. Moving on, we're going to give our top 3 favorite players. I guess they don't have to be Premier League, just if you have 3 favorite players ever that have played the game. We'll start with you, Logan.
All right. So I'll go. I guess I'll go from third to first. Third for me. And I don't know why I liked him so much, because he wasn't there long when I was first starting to watch. But Negredo was my third favorite player ever, and I don't know why. I think because he was just so big for a striker, and he was, I think watching the World Cup and stuff, he was Spain.
Yeah.
So, watching him play really got me into it, because at the time when I first started watching too, Aguero was hurt. So you had a lot of Dzeko and Negredo playing.
Dzeko is so underrated.
He is.
He is so underrated. He tears it up in every league he goes into. Yeah, go ahead.
I think he just beat Roma's. I think he did something with them at 100th goal or something. But Dzeko was always good, and they had Jovetic too. But Negredo, for some reason, I just loved the way that he played. He was so physical because he was so big. He and Dzeko, when they would put him in together, because you went from Jovetic. Like sometimes on FIFA I played Jovetic and Aguero.
Oh, I totally forgot Jovetic was there.
Yeah, then Negredo and when I put Dzeko in together, it was like the Tower of Terror. They were huge, so I mean they just bullied everybody in the box. But Negredo was my third favorite. My second favorite. This was tough because it was like I'm going back and forth between the two, but I decided that Kevin De Bruyne would be second, just because he's the most amazing player in the whole league. So, and watching him, thanks for Chelsea giving him up, so that he can make his way back to the right club in Europe. Mm-hmm. So De Bruyne was fun to watch, and all of his assists this year, it was just simply amazing to watch. And I can tell you that if we do fantasy football, that's who I'm going to go after first.
Well, I was thinking I'm hoping I get the first pick to take him.
He tore up the league in fantasy because I was watching a bunch of the fantasy stuff, and his 20 assists, plus he scored a fair amount this year, which last year he didn't because he was hurt. I think he had 3 goals last year, but this year I think he had 13. But just watching him play and the poise that he has, he's like a bigger Silva. So I just love watching him play. And then number one, obviously, is Aguero. And that's just for, all the years that I've watched, he's been there. And he's been hurt off and on. And he plays randomly now, more sporadic now that Sterling and them are good. But I think watching him play really got me into it because he's just so fast and little. And I liked him. And then I started following him on Instagram and seeing him play with his son. Like his son's like running around the living room and kicking, balls into his trophies and his boots and stuff. It's a lot of fun to watch. And he's just so quick. And the fact that he's so little, he's got to be pretty strategic as the way he gets to the goal. But he's so quick, and it's sad because I think his time is starting to slowly go. Because I think that he said he'd like to go back to Spain, so it'll be weird to watch without him and Silva because they're both the guys that I watched forever. So.
It was always so weird. As soon as Pep got there, that the rumors started swirling that he didn't like Aguero and that he would get rid of him. But
yeah, and Pep's always leaned heavily towards the younger guys too, like more so. And I think because Aguero's hurt constantly. And his is more like nagging. That's the thing that sucks. It's never like a long, it's always like soft tissue or something weird. Groin. I know he had a groin problem for a while. And I think he's fallen out of favor with Pep, and Sterling's so good, and you have Jesus, and they're just both so good, and they play up front. So it's easier to not have him there anymore. Back then when, Pellegrini was there, you couldn't afford to not have him on the side because that's when, Dzeko left, Negredo left, Jovic left. You just didn't have a whole lot of guys up front. So when he did get hurt, I remember one game actually, they had Milner up front because he was hurt and he couldn't. And Milner never really played that well for City. He's been much better with Liverpool. But I remember him playing up front one game, and I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be a disaster. Because back then they weren't as stacked, like what Matt always jokes about. He goes, it must be nice to have 2 teams where you can put one in after the other, especially with 5 subs. You just replace the whole team with better players. But again, like back then, Jovetic struggled a lot when he was there. He never really came to form. Iheanacho never came to form that they wanted. And plus, they don't have any patience. And that's what you guys warned me, I remember, because you're like, don't get too attached because City's just going to blast through the team. And I think pretty much everybody's gone. There's only one left, and it's Aguero. Because I look back at their Premier League win, and the only person in the photo left was Aguero. Like Nasri and Silva, and them are all gone. But yeah,
that's where our 2 teams are similar.
Yeah, right.
I was to say,
man, how many players like what you just mentioned? De Bruyne was a Chelsea player that we gave up on immediately and sent him off to Wolfsburg, and then he went to City. We gave up on Lukaku. We gave up on so many young players. Salah, yeah, Mo Salah. Gave up on him. went to Roma, then went to Liverpool and tore it up. I mean, it just is mind-boggling the way that some of those teams are run over there.
Yeah, I am. I'm going to be really sad the day Aguero leaves, and I think it's sooner rather than later. I think next year it'll be his. Once he runs out of his contract, I think he goes back to Spain to finish.
All right, Matt, your favorite 3 players?
Oof. Shockingly, they're all going to be on the current Liverpool team. But one of them was before Liverpool, so luckily it doesn't make it sound too bad. But my number 3 would probably have... This is constantly changing, but I would say my number 3 would probably have to be Trent Alexander-Arnold. It's only been happening over the last few years, but it's fun to watch. Liverpool, a lot of Liverpool's players are in their late 20s, but he's like the one that's right there in his early 20s. He's 21 years old, and watching him play, it can be frustrating at times because he definitely still is learning right back because he was actually a midfielder as a youth player. But it's just been crazy to watch him play, and the fact that he's from Liverpool, and that's like such a big deal to people who live in Liverpool because you had Gerrard, now you have Trent, and they even have another youngster in Curtis Jones who's also from Liverpool. But it's fun to see how much they celebrate him, and he's honestly he's not like he doesn't brag about what he does. He just kind of plays the game, and his goals have. Usually all of his goals are just they're sensational. They're either free kicks against Chelsea, because he did that twice this year. And then he also had one against Leicester this year that was like him running at full force, and he gets the pass and he just hits it once and it just goes right past. And then he did the Mbappe celebration, which was really cool. Like everyone was joking around about that one, but it's crazy to watch him because some of his passes, even just recently, the one against Chelsea where he assisted Firmino, it's insane to think he has that much accuracy. And he could, with what he's already done, become possibly one of the best players in Liverpool history. And I don't know like how big. I know that in the 70s and 80s they had some really big names, but those teams won a lot. And so like to be able to speak about him in the same term as the players in the 70s and 80s just shows how good he is now and what he can be. And the entire team right now is just so much fun because they seem a little different than like City and Chelsea, where the Liverpool players don't seem to think like they're going to get sold if they play like a couple of bad games and get replaced with someone who's like crazy better. Number 2 would have to be Van Dijk. He honestly changed Liverpool. I actually remember it was the summer transfer window before they got him, and when Southampton said, like, no, we're not selling you him, I was legitimately sad.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I knew how bad they needed him. Because the one thing I'd watched as a Liverpool fan since I started was that their center backs were terrible. Like, it frustrated me. Like, and, when I first started, it was Agger and Skrtel, and they had, like, some good history with the team. But Agger was on the bottom half of his decline, and Skrtel just, to me, I was like, yeah, he has some good moments, but I was like, he doesn't seem to be that great. He makes more mistakes than he makes spectacular plays or plays good defense. So getting him has changed Liverpool. And the thing is that I obviously, because this is more so me being a newer fan, but he wants to be at Liverpool. And like, there's Liverpool fans who are like, this is not what we're used to. This isn't what used to happen. We did not always have a player of his caliber who's world class, who's like, I want to be here.
Like Suarez?
Yeah, like that's what's been happening. Like,
who immediately left?
Yeah, you had Alonso, who still to this day is loved by Liverpool fans, but he does go to Real Madrid, and Van Dijk he's third in line for captaincy because Henderson and Milner are above him. But even so, when you watch him with the players, he's clearly he's one of the best players, but he doesn't act as though he's outside of the game. He doesn't act as though he's like so high and mighty. Like he acts just like he's one of the guys. And when you watch him play, sometimes there's a joke on Liverpool Twitter that's like when he has to do something, he gets mad because he's like because he does it. He makes it look incredibly easy, but when he does it, he'll have like a scowl on his face, like he's kind of angry. He had to go defend that guy. He's like, you shouldn't have even made me defend him. Like I shouldn't have had to do that. And it's been really fun to watch him. But my all-time favorite player, and this is the one that happened before he got to Liverpool, and I kind of similar to Logan. I'm a little sad because I don't think he's going to be on Liverpool much longer. Is Gini Wijnaldum, and it has nothing to do with Liverpool. Him going to Liverpool is a bonus. But when I played my first FIFA game, which I want to say must have been FIFA 13, it might have been FIFA 12 if I bought it, but I had him on the game, and he was like a young top prospect. The way the stats just rose him, he became insane. And then added to that, his name was almost impossible for me to say. I just loved his name. It's Jorginho Wijnaldum, and I was like, this name is so cool. And he's like this Dutch guy who doesn't seem to be like a really big name, but I was like, this is my favorite player. And I actually kept track of him because he was on PSV, and then he went to Newcastle, and then Newcastle got relegated, and then Liverpool just popped in and went like, okay, we'll buy him. And he's not the most spectacular player. Actually, a lot of Liverpool fans, or Liverpool Twitter, I wouldn't say the fans, because I think the fans really love him, but there's a good portion of Liverpool Twitter that aren't big fans of him because he doesn't do anything crazy good. But that's not his role. He's like supposed to just be the midfielder who plays defense and makes important, like he basically brings the ball from defense to offense. Like he doesn't have to, he's not the one that's going to score spectacular goals or make incredible assists. Like he's basically the messenger for it all. And he's been my favorite player, and I'm a little sad because it doesn't seem like he's probably going to be on the team much longer. His contract's up next year, and with the whole Thiago rumors, it does seem like he's the one that could be the odd man out, because it sounds like they won't sign Thiago unless they know somebody's going to leave. They kind of both play in the same spot that Klopp would want. So if they bring in Thiago, I'm a little sad, because I think that's going to be the end of Gini at Liverpool. But I'll support wherever he goes, because he's something about him. I just love him. He's easily my favorite player for it. But yeah, and so apparently I have a thing for Dutch soccer players.
Wijnaldum's brother played for Philadelphia Union.
I would say I knew he had a brother.
He barely played.
Yeah, I was to say his brother was
barely played
lower tier Dutch league in that FIFA, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. So I'd usually sign his brother too, just to have him on the team.
He carries his bag.
Make them happy, right? Make them happy.
Brotherly love.
That worked perfectly in Philly. That's why they both Wijnaldum should have been here. The city of brotherly love. Anyway, moving on to my favorite players. I'll start at number 3 as well, I guess. We're going to put Michael Ballack there. He's the one that got me into the sport just from the jersey. It just happened to be his jersey. And he became my favorite player. Number 2 right now is Christian Pulisic. I liked him before he even went to Chelsea. Big U.S. guy. He's gonna save the USA, hopefully. But number 1 is the one that my first son will bear the name of, Landon Donovan. And yes, he's also played in the Premier League. He was on loan at Everton for a year or 2 as well. USA hero. Pulisic will probably pass him at some point when you look at stats, and even probably, Landon Donovan has already said Pulisic is better than he was at his age. But Donovan was clutch. So many times when the USA needed a goal, he would score it. So those are my top 3. We do have lineups right now, actually. They just came out for the FA Cup game, and Pulisic is starting. ESPN had it listed as a 3-4-3 with Caballero, Azpilicueta, Kurt Zouma, and Rudiger, with Alonso and James in the midfield, with Jorginho, Kovacic, with Mount, Giroud, and Pulisic up top. And they also have the Arsenal 11, which is really no surprises there. I would say Martinez, Holding, Luiz, Tierney, Bellerin, Xhaka, Ceballos, Maitland-Niles, Pepe, Aubameyang, and Lacazette.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, you got both coaches are former players of the team that they're coaching. You have Giroud, who's a former Arsenal man on Chelsea. You have David Luiz, who's a former Chelsea man on Arsenal. So it's going to be an interesting game. like I said, we're going to be doing a fantasy league. If the EPL website is doing another league of fantasy draft, we're going to be doing that. What that is, if people don't know, it's kind of like fantasy football over here in the USA, or fantasy baseball, where you actually draft the players. Nobody has the same team, unlike the other model where they give you the money to spend, and you just, somebody like Pulisic would be worth $7 million, somebody like Virgil van Dijk would be $10 million, and you kind of like build your squad like that. So if you are interested in doing that, you can follow us on Twitter at Stoppage Show. You can follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Stoppage Time Soccer Show. That's also the same handle on Instagram at Stoppage Time Soccer Show, or you can email us at stoppagetimeshow@gmail.com. Before we get out of here, we're going to quickly just review, who got relegated and who got the top 4. So obviously the league winners, as we alluded to numerous times during this recording, was Liverpool, and that they finished the season with 99 points. Manchester City was in second place with 81 points. Manchester United finished third with 66, and Chelsea finished fourth with 66. Leicester City finished fifth at 62. On the bottom, the teams relegated: Norwich with 21 points, Watford with 34, and Bournemouth with 34. Aston Villa just climbed out of that bottom 3 in the last 2 match days to stay afloat with 35 points. Going on to Golden Boot, Jamie Vardy won the Golden Boot with 23 goals. He just edged past Aubameyang with 22 and Danny Ings with 22. Kevin De Bruyne, we mentioned this earlier, Logan did, with City, had 20 assists. He was the leader of assists.
That's so many.
Runner-up was Trent Alexander-Arnold with 13. So it was a 7.
And Trent even set his own defensive record for assists in a season. He set it last year with 12.
Passes. Who led in passes? Anybody have an idea?
Is it a Liverpool player?
It is, yeah.
God, an enemy wants to think it. Is it a defender?
Yes.
Is it Van Dijk?
It is, yeah. Virgil van Dijk with 3,259 passes.
They played back.
Rodrigo on Man City was runner-up with 2,579. So about a 700 difference in
that's
passes.
Actually impressive because Rodri doesn't play the whole game, but Van Dijk played every single minute.
And number three was Harry Maguire with 2,519. Clean sheets was Manchester City with Ederson, 16. Nick Pope of Burnley surprises everybody with 15 clean sheets. David De Gea with 13. And I can tell you, Kepa's not even on this list for Chelsea. And the lowest one on this list in the top 10 is 9. So Kepa didn't even have 9 clean sheets this season.
I think Chelsea had the highest goal against in the top 10, I believe.
Yeah. Let's see. Clean sheets, Kepa finishes with 8. And he's number 13 on the list.
That's why you guys are looking for a goalie.
Yep, we're being linked with Nick Pope because they don't think Ballack is gonna be coming over here. So we're looking at Nick Pope.
He was really good. He had his game after the pandemic break. His game against Liverpool was insane. Burnley drew 1-1. The only team not to lose at Anfield all year was Burnley, and it was him.
Yeah, they drew. Right?
I was watching that game. It was him. Like Liverpool should have been up 4 or 5-0 at halftime.
Well, that's what they said. They said I was watching that fantasy recap, and guys like Pope and them were finishing. They finish way higher than the top tier goalies because the top tier goalies sometimes don't even see. They don't have saves to even try.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
which is crazy because you hear about goalies that you've never heard of. You're like, what?
Liverpool, the game against Palace after the break. That was the first game. I don't believe it was ever, but it was the first game in an incredibly long time where the one team had no shots inside of like the goalkeeper area. Crystal Palace just never got, Alisson didn't even need to play. Like he didn't touch the ball.
Goals. Manchester City with 102 goals.
Close.
Liverpool was in second with 85. passes Manchester City 26,329 passes on the season, which is 3,000 more about than Liverpool.
Which shows you why we're spending so much money on defenders. It's like
Manchester City. Well, Manchester City led with clean sheets, as we just said, with 17. Yeah. That's one more than Ederson. So there was a game where backup goalie came in and had a clean sheet. And crosses, 914 crosses for Manchester City, which is just about 18 more than Liverpool.
Liverpool cross a lot.
The only one in that whole thing that Liverpool is not runner-up on is clean sheets, which was Burnley, and Liverpool tied for clean sheets. So
yeah, Liverpool went through like a stage at the start of the year where they won every single game 2-1. Mm-hmm. Like it was just, and that was at the start because Alisson missed, I believe it was 8 games after the first game. He got injured against Norwich, and he missed a good 7-8 games, and I don't think they held many clean sheets during that time. And then they lost a clean sheet because Alisson got a red card because he punched the ball outside of the box. And then
jeez, I remember that, yeah.
And then there were a lot of Liverpool fans were pissed because they felt the official didn't give Adrian enough time because he just Adrian was still getting his gloves on and the official blew the whistle, and then they scored on the free kick.
Mm. All right, so before we head out here, that was all of our review of stats, but let's get some predictions here. We're going to start off with today's game, who wins the FA Cup. If people, you're going to be listening to this after the FA Cup already happened, so you'll be able to laugh at who's wrong here. This is recorded about 45 minutes before the game here. Chelsea or Arsenal, Logan?
I'm going Chelsea 2-1.
Pulisic score or no?
Yeah, he's playing really well.
Let's do it.
He's got too much momentum to go. I think he goes for one early.
Matt, Chelsea or Arsenal?
I'm going to say Chelsea. I actually think it'll be 3-2.
Oh.
Both are rough defenses. So, I mean, it's...
And let me just give you a stat here. Chelsea has won 7 of their last 9 matches in FA Cup finals, while Arsenal has won 12 of their last 13 FA Cup matches against Chelsea. So they kind of have our number in this competition for whatever reason.
I just looking at offensively, Chelsea's better, and defensively, I think you'll make less mistakes, or at least less prone.
Yeah, so Luis is due for a mistake or two today.
It's a good run, but in the end, Chelsea are better than Arsenal, so they really should be winning the game.
I feel a lot better about it too with Kepa not playing. To be honest, Caballero is much better.
It feels like Chelsea's coming together at the right time. Like it felt like over the last couple of games that Chelsea was finally starting to play well. I think Lampard, I don't know, man. He's done some things there. I think that'll have lasting effects.
Especially without we had the transfer ban, so we couldn't sign any players, and we have Chelsea's looked good with bringing in the youth, and hopefully they can balance.
Yeah, you can either sell because you like to sell your younger players anyway. You can get Pulisic to City. We need somebody up front still.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm gonna go with Chelsea as well. The homer in me is gonna say that Chelsea's gonna win. Pulisic is gonna score a hat trick, and it's gonna be great. But I know that's not gonna actually happen. But this would be pretty big for a U.S. player to be playing in a FA Cup final starting, and if he scores or assists a goal to help win the game, that's exactly what we want our youth USA players doing to help elevate their game even further. Okay, Matt, this one's a little close to your heart here due to FIFA 20. We have Brentford City versus Fulham in the promotion playoff on Tuesday the 4th. Who do you got, Matt?
I have Brentford. I think that game will also be decently scoring. I think it would actually end 3-1. Brentford are statistically they should win pretty handedly. They're one of the highest scoring championship teams. I believe they had the best defense as well. And in all honesty, I would rather them win it just because they're new.
And they haven't been up there since the 30s or 40s.
Right.
Yeah, Fulham similar to why I kind of wanted West Brom not to make it. Like, I've seen them in the Premier League. They gotten relegated, promoted. It's kind of nice to see teams kind of come out of the blue and end up making it. And plus, I was easily more impressed with Brentford in the second leg than either Fulham or Cardiff were. Both teams. Mm-hmm. I know the 3 players that Brentford have up at top because of FIFA, and I don't think there's a team besides Leeds that were in the championship that could really match them. And if Fulham are not going to defend well, it's going to be, I think, a pretty long day. And I just think there's something with Brentford that they haven't made it yet, and they also have a new stadium next year. It just seems too perfect.
Destined.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems too perfect. Fulham have been up there, and I know that they have a good history, but it would just be nice to have the new team. And Leeds coming back up after a while is also kind of fun because I've never seen them in the Premier League. Yeah. So getting a couple of new teams in there would just be a lot more fun than kind of a team I've seen up and down.
Yeah, and I would say Brentford's manager has been really good. I mean, they've been playing very good soccer, and both of the playoff games this week were very entertaining. Fulham and Cardiff, started off go to Cardiff kind of pulling one back early, but and then it kind of just fell apart there. But Brentford immediately getting in control of that game in the second leg was very exciting for a team that was down 1-0 and they had a red card that was rescinded. The suspension didn't hold because they overturned it. Logan, do you have Brentford or Fulham here?
I think Brentford. I watched that game more closely yesterday or the other day. That I think Fulham, they didn't look nearly as good as Brentford looks right now. I thought that being that far ahead of Cardiff, and then they made it a game. But I think Brentford's the strongest side, and I think a lot of people were writing about that on Twitter, how much they think that Brentford's the stronger side in the game, and I think it ends 3-1, like Matt said. And plus, it's just a good story. It'll be a good story to bring back 2 teams that have not been in the Premier League for a while, and can you imagine opening that stadium up and maybe January, hopefully, or February, and they'll have fans. It'll be exciting for them after a really rough year. Mm-hmm. And I think that'll just be really exciting too, because man, that new stadium Brentford's building is really beautiful. Like, I'm seeing the concept art for it and stuff, and that'd just be a really exciting time. And like Matt said, I don't really want to see Fulham up there again. They're so boring. It's like
they were just up a few years ago.
So bad. When they get up there, it's like, yeah, this is horrible to watch. And then they get sent back and they come back again. And
I think they actually got relegated last year.
Yeah, I think it was.
They spent a lot of money. I think they got promoted and then relegated immediately. So then coming back up I don't know.
Right, just give us some new blood. Yeah. Leeds. I'm really excited to see Leeds play up because they've got they got a big club that I think they could hang around for a bit.
They got money. Their owner has money, and he wants to get them to the Premier League, and he did after about 2 or 3 years, and now they got a world-class coach. So I mean, it's gonna be great. I also have Brentford going through against Fulham. Sorry, Tim Ream, American center back. I don't think Fulham is going to be able to handle Brentford as well. So yeah, I think we all picked the same stuff, which means we're going to be wrong.
Right.
And we'll be able to cover that at another time. We're going to be doing an EPL preview sometime in August, and picking our top 4, picking our relegated teams, and picking Golden Boot winners. We might review the Champions League final before we get to, or preview the Champions League final before we get to that as well. But just be on the lookout for that. Yeah, I think that's everything we got. Go Chelsea today in the FA Cup final, and and go Brentford.
Ooh, heck yeah!
Everybody, thanks for listening, and that wraps up Stoppage Time Soccer Show.
Kane has stolen it at the death. That's what he's there for.
Thank you for listening to Stoppage Time Soccer Show. We hope that you continue to listen to our show and listen to us recap the English Premier League from our perspective. We'll also be talking some Champions League and any other leagues that impact world soccer.